Half-Life 2 is a trendsetter among gaming, and the impacts of this game can still be felt today, with many critically acclaimed games such as Fear, Bioshock, and Dead Space, just to name a few. As the game came out all the way back in 2004, a time before my parents were even born, this game has been enjoyed by countless amounts of people throughout the last 2 decades. Half-Life 2 influence goes beyond video games as well. The platform where I get my reviews from, Steam, wouldn't even exist without Half-Life 2. Half-Life 2 was a key reason why Steam was made in the first place. Steam allowed for developers to give quick and easy patches to the game, without having to release a second disc, saving a lot of money. But we are not here today to celebrate the success of this game, and what it has accomplished. Who cares about positivity? Instead, I've spent about 2.5 hours of my life reading through all the negative Steam reviews. I want to learn more about the minority, people who don't love a game with overwhelmingly positive reviews. What made them dislike or even hate a game so much to the point where they would go out of their way to write a negative review about it? Just what is it about this game that they dislike and hate so much? Before we get into this video, I would just like to remind you to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Cheers. Well, as you can probably imagine, many of these Steam reviews were asking for Half-Life 3, saying that the game is bad with no extra context, or telling you to play this masterpiece of a game. There were quite a few reviews that just didn't make sense, or were obvious trolls. And one of my personal favorites of these nonsensical bunch is the one where this guy just says that Half-Life rips off the story from Call of Duty Black Ops. Another one of my favorites is this one here, where a guy just decides to review Banjo-Kazooie instead. Many of these reviews here are quite memey and not serious, but there are a few reviews here that have solid complaints about the game. Before I cover these short essay reviews, I'm going to look over a problem that I experienced myself when I first played the game: nausea. I only played this game for about an hour, but it made me violently nauseated. I've heard great things about it, so it's pretty disappointing that I can't play it for very long. This is apparently a pretty common issue for many players. Wanted to play this game actually, but it gives me nausea the 2 times I've played it. Tried changing FOV, but it didn't help much. May give it more tries in the future. When I first played Half-Life 2, I would get nauseous when riding the jet ski in the 4th chapter of the game, Water Hazard. To help with the nausea, what I did is I changed my field of view by going into the console and typing FOV_desired, and then the number I wanted to change my field of view to. The FOV range is quite large, so I recommend for you to experiment around and see what you find best. This review is a bit too long for me to read here in its entirety, but there's an important bit of text here. I don't know, maybe I've just been spoiled with good shooters physics by playing Bioshock and Dead Space, where every shot you land had an impact and feel to it. Enemies responded the way they should, and the controls had a weight to it. Now, I'm going to play footage of 3 different Valve games, and you can compare the gun feel and gunplay for each, and you can tell me in the comments what you think. In my opinion, the reason why Half-Life 2's gunplay feels lackluster is because of the gun sounds, as they feel like they are very tame and quiet, not quite packing the oomph like the guns have in CSGO and Half-Life 1. Now for this general review section, I will first read out a single review and then answer its points. Once upon a time, Half-Life 2 was the game to play if you wanted a single player experience. The graphics were incredible, the weapons were all fun to use, especially the famous gravity gun, and it added more to the cinematic approach that the first Half-Life had. It was the gem of that era, but that era is long gone. Playing Half-Life 2 without modding today doesn't give the same excitement that it did years ago. The once impressive graphics now look old, especially when you notice the reuse of character models throughout the game. The weapons are no longer as cool, as Valve themselves topped the gravity gun with the portal gun years later. The cinematic portions are now a chore, as many other games have tried being more cinematic, except unlike Half-Life 2, they allow you to skip it. I'm not saying that the game itself is bad, you can still have some fun shooting Combine soldiers. However, the game unfortunately can no longer live up to the high standards it set up for itself years ago. From what I can gather, the person who wrote this review just got bored of the game. They played it years ago and they enjoyed it, but when they came back to it, they had really high expectations and they just weren't met, so they left unsatisfied and bored while playing the game. One of the most frequent complaints in these general reviews are the graphics. I would like to remind you that these games came out in 2004, the era of PlayStation 2, GameCube, and Xbox games. But well, look at these graphics for yourself. In my opinion, these look stunning. The textures have high resolutions and still have great detail, without being too overbearing and changing the game's atmosphere. Just because Valve released Portal, that does not make the gravity gun any less interesting and less cool. Like I said before, I believe this person was just overhyping himself and got bored of the game. The way Half-Life 2 told its story was different from the norm. Rather than make you watch cutscenes, you had full control of your character during the set pieces, letting you get different angles of the character speaking, or you could just mess around while they talk. A lot of these people in the negative reviews seem to miss the mark here, saying that the game has no story and that they are bored having to sit and wait for the NPC to open the door or to do an action. What on earth happened to this game? I played all of the original 3 Half-Lives, Opposing and Blue Shift, and then replayed them several times in the era before Steam. This just seems dull. Can someone explain what the appeal of this is or should be? The first game had esoteric environments, a slowly unraveling plot, but mainly the surprise shootouts with weird and unexpected things. That you got to explode with increasingly hilarious weapon. What? Less than 20 hours? Really? You'll have bought this either in the first wave of fervor or as part of a bundle. Give it a go, but I must be one of the rare ones not overly fond. I don't know about this, Chief. The reason why the atmosphere feels so different in the 2 games is because of the storyline. In the first Half-Life game, there was an experiment gone wrong, and you were seeing it unravel in real time. In the second game, you go through the aftermath, and you get to see the world filled with dread as people are basically slaves to the Combine. Regarding the weapon statement, I'm not quite sure what they mean by that. The weapons in both games are very familiar, and from what I can remember, the only quote-unquote hilarious weapon I can think of are the Snarks, or the Hive Hand. If anyone has a better idea of what he means, please tell me in the comments below. Complaining about a game being less than 20 hours. The length of a game doesn't determine how good a game is. Half-Life 2 game length is also part of Valve's vision. There are plenty of games that are amazing with short runtimes too, with the ones coming to mind right now being Stray and Titanfall 2. I have a confession to make. I just hate Half-Life 2. I adore Half-Life 1, and this game just feels like a downgrade. They reduced the amount of enemy types you face to pretty much just one, which are basically just humans with guns. The same can be said for Half-Life 1. You basically only have 2 enemy types in that game, being the Zen creatures and the military. While the enemy pool in Half-Life 2 is smaller, you still have a mixture of the two. On the alien sides, you have the head crabs, striders, and antlions. Then you have the Combine for the military equivalent. Now, the main reason I looked into these reviews is because Half-Life 2 is a very important game, forever changing the gaming industry as we know it. But like everything else in life, there are various drawbacks and little features that could have been done differently and better. It is very important to look at these criticisms and to acknowledge them, especially with things that you really enjoy. This is not just limited to the games, but other medias like movies and books as well. You can then take these criticisms and learn from them, iterating and making a better project in the future. But many of these negative reviews seem to miss the mark, not realizing that the game just isn't for them, or that the game is of an older time. They look at the game through the lens of 2022, rather than appreciating what the game has done in 2004. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe. On the left, you'll have a card of my latest current video, and on the right, you will see a Pokemon Fire Red Challenge spin to only. I made this video a very long time ago, but it still holds up relatively okay. Anyway, thanks again for watching. Cheers.